During World War II, I was a carrier pilot primarily, and my job was in the Pacific Theater, and I fought mainly against the Japanese, who are our enemies at that time. Well, I was interesting because I was one of the few men that started with the civilian pilot training. And when war came along, I was already in part of the service, and so I just continued on up. And when the war really broke out, those guys that were in for a while did have a chance to choose what we wanted to do, and I chose flying and ended up on a carrier. It was very, very important to do the best that I could for our country, and that was the opportunity at the time. So combining that with my dear love of flying, I was very fortunate to get picked for flight training, and I stayed in with flight training. Some of the fellows didn't make it. There's a screening process, and I was very happy that I could go through. I didn't care much for the blood that was spilled, but that had to be done in order for us to win the war. Most worried.
There you go.
Yeah. Geez, there were so many. I think I was the most worried when I alluded to it a little bit earlier. My colleague, Foster, from New England, and we went through training together, and he was picked for that miserable thing when the Japanese took those young men and put a bomb on them and said, "Now you go flying to get those guys." I think the most scared that I was when Foster got killed, and I was left there with that big, I would say, squadron of enemy. Well, yeah, that and the Navy, I did, the Distinguished Flying Cross was probably higher than any of the others, but I've got enough to last a lifetime. It had to do with the number of flights that were in combat. And I don't know how many there were at the time, but I do know that's why I was awarded. And I got more awards that came in that haven't been publicized. In some ways it was a letdown because life was routine and humdrum, and you didn't know exactly what you were going to do, and you had to get your family going again, and you had to become a civilian after being a Navy man for all these years. That was most of it. Well, the little plane up at the top is me in the fighter. That's a carrier fighter. That's a special kind of plane to land on a carrier. And I'm getting ready to get into the flight pattern below where the bow of the ship is. And I'm about to get down to just about sea level, just 50 feet above, flying the pattern. And I'll get picked up by the landing signal officer, and he will tell me what to do. And when the landing signal officer gets connecting with me and starts giving me signals, then I'm not in control of anything. Everything is passed over to the landing signal officer and thereby to the ship. I think that World War II probably showed us, and of course the rest of the world too, what a miserable experience war is, how much damage it can do, and there's nothing really romantic about it, like the news media had to say that in order to get people, but it just seemed almost impossible that the people should be excited about fighting a war.